You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you to start out the weekend, and unfortunately for the Braves, it is not on a winning note as they were unable to find the offense they needed in a 3-1 loss to those San Diego Padres in the first of a 4-game series. We will dive into what didn't go right for the Braves, including kind of an odd start for Max Fried, based on how good he had been over the past month or so. This was not exactly what we had come to expect from him. And unfortunately, the offense wasn't able to bail him out either. We'll talk a little bit about that. And, of course, give you a couple of injury updates for some key Braves, including one who went down in this game. What's going on with Travis d'Arnaud? We'll talk about that. And we will get you set for Game 2 on Saturday as well. Before we get started, though, as always, I need to remind you, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Jake, just kind of one of those games where I think that, you've come to expect Max Fried. He's been so good to give you another great start. It wasn't his worst by far, and it wasn't an unmanageable deficit for the Braves, but they didn't have the offense going, and that ultimately, I think, is going to be the thing that always hurts you. I've heard you got to be able to outscore your opponent to win a baseball game.
Yeah, especially when the opponent only scores 3 runs. You got to be able to try to put up a better fight than the Braves did. I said it afterward on social media. This might be one of my least favorite games of the year, and it started with so much promise in that first inning, and then everything kind of fell apart, and it just got worse from there.
It just kind of did. It just felt like it never quite got right for the Braves, offensively speaking. There were a lot of opportunities in this one. Meanwhile, the Padres, they had base runners all over the place against Max Fried. And that was really where it felt like he just didn't quite have the level of execution, maybe the efficiency that he'd been enjoying in a lot of his recent starts, including, a 9-inning complete game shutout, some no-hit bids, things that were really going well for him. On this night, a ton of base runners, 9 hits, and 3 walks on top of that. I think he's kind of fortunate that all he ran into was one 3-run inning, but unfortunately for the Braves, that was all the Padres needed to win this game.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, with the way the offense has been lately, the starting pitcher has to pretty much be perfect. You just cannot give up a ton of runs right now with the way the offense has struggled to put up runs of their own. So you fall behind like that. The pitching did a great job in the bullpen. I know we'll get into it, of giving this Braves offense a chance. Like you said, Max, he's more of a pitch to contact pitcher, and sometimes you're going to have nights like this. All the hits he gave up were singles. I think every night, every hit, all 13 of them that the Braves gave up tonight were singles, but sometimes that's going to happen with a pitch to contact pitcher. Sometimes you're just going to have some tough batted ball luck, and maybe defense didn't quite make some plays behind him that could have been made here or there. But he also hurt himself with some walks. He certainly wasn't as sharp, but it just, a lot of bad things, unfortunate things kind of culminating there with Max Fried getting ran, and some good at-bats by the Padres, continuing to put pressure on him and work up his pitch count.
Yeah, and the Padres did not strike out much against Max Fried either. Just 2 of those on the night, and you don't expect everybody to, do their best Luis Arraez impression, but it certainly seemed like they were putting the ball in play. And against the ground ball pitcher, and Brian Snitker touched on this after the game, if it is hit right at somebody, maybe that whole outing looks a little bit differently, but I think that's the thing you could say about a lot of baseballs in the history of this game. If it was hit at somebody, what would the game have been like? But to his point, it wasn't like he was getting hit hard, which is something you already touched on. And as you look at what Max Fried is capable of, and when he is on, he does generate a lot of ground balls. That's part of his game. I think the one play that might have stemmed the tide, made it a little bit different, at least got him through the 5th inning, was the double play the Braves were unable to turn. Orlando Arcia got it started. Ozzie Albies not able to get the relay over to first in time or really on target. And that, I think, is the play that kind of left the door open just enough for the Padres to cobble together that 3-run inning, and for the Braves offense just unable to answer the bell.
And it's an issue that honestly probably needs to get talked about a little bit more. Ozzie's arm at second base just is not that good, and it's cost the Braves a lot of double plays, that one included. He has one of the worst arms. You can go look at these numbers on Baseball Savant. They're there for you. He has one of the worst arms of all second basemen. So it has been a problem there for Ozzie, just whether it's the lingering issue from the shoulder injuries now had, a couple years ago at this point still, but just not a great arm there. And it has cost the Braves a lot of double plays. And when you're a ground ball pitcher like Max Fried, you're going to need those double plays. You're going to need the defense to make those plays behind you to help pick him up when he is giving up those base hits, when balls are able to just be out of the reach of infielders, and he's going to give up those weak hits like he does from time to time. He needs those plays to be converted behind him.
Yeah, you look at the StatCast data. I just pulled it up real quick. I mean, I know that Ozzie has not really passed the eye test in recent years. And when you think about it, Jake, when he came into the league, Ozzie always was a plus defender, at least in my mind he was. And the shoulder injury, that was something that did surprise me. And he had that offseason surgery, I think the winter before last, and you just kind of thought, wait a minute, I didn't really know the shoulder was an issue here. But that's something else that he had worked on. And that was after missing significant time in 2022 with the broken foot and also the broken finger. Then he got the offseason shoulder procedure. But yeah, bottom 4 percentile in baseball as far as arm strength is concerned, bottom 5 in outs above average. And clearly the arm's going to play a role in that as well. But yeah, this is something we have not talked a ton about with Ozzie Albies, because typically he makes the plays that are hit at him, but it really has not been the same dynamic type player that he was defensively in his first few years in the league.
And you wonder, too, with the shift going away, if maybe that covered up some of these issues before, because it's been 2 years now that we haven't had that exaggerated shift. And I'm right there with you. I thought Ozzie Albies would win a Gold Glove one day. I thought he was that good a defender early on. But these last 2 years, again, with the new shift restrictions, maybe it's exposed his lack of range a little bit, his lack of arm strength as well. But he's been definitely hasn't been a positive over there defensively. But I think it sticks out more when you have these double plays that just aren't getting turned. And a lot of it seems to be because of just his lack of arm strength.
Yeah, and you go back and look the last few years, his arm strength has been toward the bottom of the league, and that bottom 10th percentile is outs above average, though, a couple of years ago, much better. He was in the 89th percentile as recently as 2020. But again, the shift was in place, and maybe that's the thing. And since we're not doing a postcast, it's all related to defense, the shift, and what might have changed for Ozzie Albies. Let's just say this: that play wasn't made, and unfortunately, it was one of many things that didn't go right for the Braves. But it wasn't just defensively, and it wasn't just one guy. This offense, once again, I mean, we've had to talk about this an awful lot. The answer was no when it came to, can they pick up Max Fried on a night that maybe he doesn't have it, a night that the bullpen is able to hold serve and really go blow for blow with what the Padres were throwing out there. And unfortunately, again, Jake, you look at it, Ronald Acuna Jr. was back in the lineup. He was able to pick up a base hit in 3 trips, also drew a walk, so on base a couple of times. But the Braves, after they scored that first inning run, which was Acuna coming across the plate, courtesy of Matt Olson, not able to really get the key hit in some would-be rallies that could have really changed the whole complexion of this game.
It could be. Like I said, you got off to the great start. Ronald gets a hit. Ozzie gets on base. That inning really turned on what I thought was interference. I don't know how it's not. With Ozzie trying to go into third base there. I mean, maybe that's a base running mistake by Ozzie. The ball's right in front of Profar there. Maybe shouldn't have tried to make the risk, to go to third there either way. But I mean, I don't know how that's not interference. Ozzie's trying to dive into the base, and the player is in his way. That's clear obstruction in my mind. But either way, he's out, and that inning just kind of falls apart right there when it looked like the Braves maybe were going to put up a crooked number, get off to a good start offensively. And then, like I said, just nothing after that. And this isn't one of those nights where you can look at the exit velocity numbers and say, the Braves were just a little bit unlucky. 18 strikeouts. The at-bats were terrible all night long. This was one of the, like I said, it was one of my least favorite games all year to watch so far. I mean, it was just frustrating to watch up and down, just really could do nothing against a guy who came into this game with an ERA over 5. And I get it. You don't see knuckleballers every often, but you would think second, third time through, maybe they start to figure him out a little bit, as it seems like most of the other rest of the league has. And they just couldn't. They couldn't get it done. And the Padres do have a good bullpen. A lot of guys coming in, throwing hard, which is giving the Braves trouble, but just bad at-bats up and down. This was just a really bad night for the offense all around.
Yeah, there were some of those, including one with Michael Harris, I think, late in the game, and just was not able to really put together a very good at-bat against Matsui. And that one, I mean, he's not alone. Let me just put it that way. And obviously, we're not going to pick on one guy on a night where there's 18 strikeouts. You've got 3 for Orlando Arcia, 3 for Zach Short as well. But again, those aren't the names that you're trying to ask, or really asking at all, to be carrying your offense. I know Zach Short has been great in his short time with the Braves, if you pardon the pun, but this is not what the lineup typically hinges on. But everybody up and down the order struck out at least once in this game. And that is not a stat that we've talked about too much this year with the Braves. I mean, they strike out a little bit, but it's not one of those alarming type numbers that a couple of years ago we were kind of wondering if it was going to be the Achilles heel of this club. Matt Olson, though, 2 hits in this one, drove in the only Atlanta run. If there is a bright spot for the offense, Jake, it's the continued resurgence of Matt Olson, who has finally shown that he's going to be able to string some games together and may have hit his way out of that slump that really had him absolutely bewildered for about 26 or so games.
Yeah, he's looked good here as of late. And again, he's the one guy that I have said, look at the underlying data, look at the metrics. I know people don't want to hear it. Again, they just want the results, but he still has continued to make hard contact. And now he's starting to get rewarded for some of that. So 2 more hits for him, had the RBI, and Ozuna as well. I mean, he got a hit late in this game as well to bring the tying run to the plate and extended his hit streak to 10 games. So, I mean, you got 2 guys now there in the middle of the order, 3-4 or 4-5, depending on when Riley gets back. But at least you have 2 guys there that are getting going. Like you said, Ronald was on base twice. I mean, you can kind of look in there and say that maybe you see some things working out, but you can't get past 18 strikeouts. That's just really hard to overcome as a team. You got to be able to put the ball in play a little bit more than that. I did want to give Zach Short a little bit of a shout out. He should have walked again in this game. He had a bad call on him. And even his at bats when he's striking out right now, it seemed like he's going to a 3-2 count. They're just good at bats. And he made a run saving play in this game as well. He's been fantastic filling in for Austin Riley.
Yeah, no 2 ways about it. That was an unexpected storyline this year because clearly having Riley on the side is not what you want, having him out of the lineup. But Zach Short came over and in a very short order was able to jump right in and give the Braves quite a few things over this week over at third base. But perhaps that playing time is going to come to a close with Austin Riley nearing a return to the lineup, it sounds like. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Max Fried tonight. We'll talk some about what the Atlanta offense was facing because Waldron and the Padres, they were able to throw some pretty good arms at the Braves as well. And unfortunately, we're going to talk about a little bit of an injury scare for Travis d'Arnaud, who took a foul tip off the mask and had to leave this game early. We'll talk about all of that as the Braves postcast continues. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trade, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400,000 top brands. 400 top brands. That would be a lot more. And get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support, industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. That's always nice. Pros and skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free master trade program. Every master trade gets access to dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere in just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Well, Jake, runs were in short supply for the Atlanta Braves in this particular game as they get just 1 on 7 hits. No errors for Atlanta. The Padres, meanwhile, 3 runs on 13 hits, 1 error as they pick up the win. Atlanta now 26-15. Padres a game under 500 at 23-24. Waldron picks up the win. He's 2-5. Fried takes the loss, drops to 3-2, and a save goes to Estrada in this one. It just a night where it was kind of a battle of the bullpens down the stretch. The 2 starters, I mean, Waldron clearly with his 10 punch-outs. He was throwing the knuckleball, and it was a good-looking pitch, but he was also, I felt like, Jake, able to do a pretty efficient job of speeding up and then slowing down the Braves in some of these by using his four-seamer and his other pitches when he needed to, and not just throwing them a steady diet of 100% knuckleballs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, obviously, when you're throwing a knuckleball. You want to be able to try to slow them down, be looking for that knuckleball, and then even though it's not, great velocity, it's just you average 91.5 miles per hour with it, but when you're seeing that knuckleball and trying to catch up with it, that seems like 100 when it's coming in there, and that's obviously the key for anybody that can throw a knuckleball. But again, I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he threw the ball well, but again, I just put more of it on the Braves offense, just not having good at-bats up and down. I mean, this guy's in the majors for a reason. He's capable of going out there and having good games, but we're continually saying that, guys are having great, pitching great games against the Braves. And it's just, I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of oversaying that. The Braves got to step up and put some good at-bats together. I don't really care who is out there on the mound, but certainly, like you said, Waldron, he was doing a good job mixing up those speeds, keeping Braves hitters off balance all night long.
5 2/3 innings for him, 1 earned run. It came in the first inning, 5 hits, couple of walks, 10 strikeouts. He lowers his ERA on the year to 5. So to Jake's point, it's not like the Braves were out there facing a Cy Young contender on this night, but unorthodox. Most certainly Waldron would check that box. For Fried, 4 1/3 innings, 9 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 3 walks, only 2 strikeouts for him. Kind of a step back after what had been seemingly start after start of Max Fried, reminding you who he is after that slow start to the season, which was very un-Max Fried-like. But it was not a poorly pitched game overall for Atlanta. Fried had to deal with a lot of traffic on the base paths. The Braves bullpen, meanwhile, 4 2/3 innings, 4 punch-outs, 4 hits, all of them singles, with Aaron Bummer tossing an inning and 2/3, Joe Jimenez, Jesse Chavez, and Raisel Iglesias taking care of the rest of it. I mean, the Braves pitching staff continues to do its thing. You get 9 innings of 3-run ball, Jake, you're going to expect that more times than not, the Braves have a chance to win that baseball game. But in this one, it just felt like they could not find the big hit. A lot of rallies were shorted out by, you touched on it earlier, an awful lot of strikeouts, and that's not going to help things out. But to go back to the pitching staff and kind of key in on that, Fried wasn't sharp. This wasn't his best start. You were able to get some good things out of the Atlanta bullpen. This was a winnable game, a manageable deficit. You just could not figure out a way to back that up.
I think that's, again, what makes this one such a frustrating game is, Max Fried doesn't have his best stuff. He doesn't make it through the 5th inning, but he does get out of a lot of close jams. Aaron Bummer comes in. He limits the damage and pitches another clean inning. He's been really good as of late. The bullpen keeps you in this game, gives you a chance, and the offense just still can't really do anything to come back. They can't find that big hit and just striking out way too much. But if you want to look at, one positive, one bright thing from tonight, it's that pitching. Again, 3 runs given up. That's giving your team a chance to win. The bullpen coming in, covering a lot of innings with Max Fried. Like I said, not being able to make it through the 5th and giving the team a chance to win. And, the pitching staff continues to do that. It is, back-to-back starts now. Charlie Morton had a rough one on Wednesday. Max Fried, again, not able to go deep in this one either. But at least in this one, the pitching staff did what they had to do to give the team a chance. It's just, you strike out 18 times, you don't put up good, consistent at-bats, it's really hard to overcome despite whatever the pitching staff does. They have to pretty much be perfect every night, and that's just a lot of pressure now on that pitching staff. If you give up more than 2 or 3 runs, you feel like it's kind of out of reach with the way the offense is going right now, something I thought I'd never say with this Braves offense.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably bump that line up to if you give up 4 or 5 runs, you feel like it's going to be an uphill climb because the offense has shown at times that 3 or 4 might be workable, but to your point, it has not been nearly as consistent. It certainly hasn't been anywhere close to as explosive as it's been a year ago, and that's for a variety of reasons because it's not always the 18 strikeouts. It's not always the bad batted ball luck, and the sample size is growing larger and larger and larger. It's just strange to see it, and I'm with you. I did not think that we'd be talking about a Braves offense that had gone from one of the tops in the league to middle of the pack and having, some rough nights. Every team's going to have them, but far more than I thought that they were going to have really at any point during the season to make it as big of a narrative as it's certainly become. Atlanta's bullpen, to put a bow on this, 4 2/3 innings, 4 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts between Bummer, Jimenez, Chavez, and Raisel Iglesias in closing this thing out. The Padres, meanwhile, I mean, tip of the cap to some of the arms they brought in. They're pumping 100 miles an hour. In particular, we saw Suarez and Estrada both doing that. De Los Santos as well. All of them were doing their thing after the lefty Matsui, who was the first out of the pen to try to close things up for Waldron when he got in a little bit of trouble later on and face a couple of key lefties. But yeah, they were able to miss some bats, and it's no surprise why when you saw how well these guys can throw.
Yeah, I mean, they're good guys coming out of that bullpen. I talked about this on the podcast Friday when I had the host of Locked On Padres come over. That bullpen, they have some really good arms coming out that throw high velocity. But, I mean, the Braves had some chances against those guys. They brought in Matsui, lefty-lefty matchup to Michael Harris, which was just a really bad at bat. He pulled up a couple of swords, and that was a tough at bat for him. He's going to get some swords there on Baseball Savant now. And then, when Suarez came in, they bring him in the 8th to face the top of the Braves lineup there, and Marcell Ozuna gets the hit, like I said, to extend that streak, brings up Matt Olson as a tying run, and then he punches out on 100 down the middle, and Michael Harris does later in the game as well. pick on Michael Harris in this one. I know we've kind of done it a couple of times now. It's just really up and down. I mean, just weren't able to get that big hit. And like you said, they had chances. They at least brought the tying run to the plate several times, but had runners on second and third too after a double from Chadwick Tromp, who had to come into the game. But again, just couldn't get that big hit to tie things up or even take the lead.
Yeah, and it's rough when you got two runners in scoring position and you're not able to at least plate one of those. And just a little bit here and there would make a pretty big difference for the Braves here lately. Little things can add up to very big things. Something that we don't want to have to talk too much about, but is always a possibility in the game, is an injury, and the Braves have dealt with quite a few of those this year. Travis d'Arnaud had to leave this game in the fifth inning after taking a foul tip, a hard one right off the mask. Some dizziness that he was dealing with in the aftermath of that. Certainly concerning when you consider that he's had 4 concussions in his career. The tests, it sounds like he was able to pass tonight. Braves are going to reevaluate him, kind of figure things out. I fully expect for Chadwick Tromp to be the man behind the plate. But yeah, for Travis d'Arnaud, the timing of that with Sean Murphy still out, not exactly ideal, and more to the point, concerning because of the concussion history that d'Arnaud has dealt with as recently as last year.
Yeah, certainly scary for d'Arnaud. And like you said, with the concussion history that he has, glad that it hasn't been classified as a concussion, but certainly some dizziness there. Brian Snitker already saying he won't start on Saturday, and Luke Williams would be the emergency catcher tonight. The question now is going to be, do they need to bring up another catcher? You're already short on the bench with Austin Riley. We'll see if maybe he returns on Saturday, but just depending on how all that plays out, they may need to bring another catcher up. I mean, it's pretty scary going into the game. You got one catcher and not sure if the other one's going to be available. So we'll see how all that plays out. But just like you said, I think just more importantly for Travis, just because of the history that he has, you pray that's nothing serious there that's going to cause him any lingering issues.
Yeah, if he comes in and he's fine tomorrow, then obviously that will let everybody kind of breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. But you want to be cautious with it. And, in this day and age, with how much we know about it now, you've got to be cognizant of it at all times. We got a few more things to get to, and that includes a preview of Game 2 of this 4-game series. We'll get to that on the Braves Postcast as we continue right after this break. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning bet of at least $5. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, Game 2 of this series is coming our way on Saturday, a 7:15 p.m. first pitch for the Braves and Padres. Still no Austin Riley. We just talked about, some of the things that are not going right for the Braves, injuries, and also, as you mentioned, some roster concerns, perhaps, depending on the severity of what Travis d'Arnaud is dealing with. But I have a feeling Austin Riley should be jumping back in the lineup this weekend. He says he's feeling fine. The team seems to feel that he's, well enough to return soon. You don't have the same ability to backdate the injured list stint beyond 3 days, and now we're well beyond that. So the Braves would have burned a few days at this point if they do put him on the injured list. I guess I say all that to say, Jake, I think Austin Riley will be back in the lineup. Thought it might happen Friday. I'm really kind of expecting it on Saturday.
Yeah, me too. Maybe the old kind of Bobby Cox, self-imposed rule. Give him that one more day after he says he's ready.
Sure.
Maybe that's going to be the case here, but I would expect him to be back in there on Saturday. Like I said, if not, your bench is really kind of limited depending on what happens with Travis d'Arnaud. But I'll be glad to get Riley in there. Like I said, we talked about, I really thought he was starting to turn some corners before he got injured. So hopefully you can get him back in there quickly and he can continue that. And again, as we talk about with Olsen swinging the bat better and Ozuna, continuing to stay hot as he has, then all of a sudden you got a 3, 4, 5 in the order there that you feel pretty good about. And again, Ronald's been getting on base. It's still at the top of the order, so you just need to put some bats together. You need as many of your big horses in there as you can and get them all going. But hopefully Riley is feeling much better and can get back in there on Saturday and help get this offense going.
Yeah, and you and I haven't really had a chance to talk about it, but I thought maybe the day off for Ronald on Wednesday was a good thing because you could couple it with the off day. Just let him decompress, take a little bit of the pressure off. He was on base 2 times tonight. He did say prior to the game that, I am pressing, but then he follows it up with a Ronald Acuna-ism is what I'm going to say is, but I'm always pressing because I always want to play my best. And I believe that because that's how much this guy loves the game. But clearly it can add up and it can compound and make things a little bit more difficult when you do go through a long extended I don't want to necessarily call it a full-on slump for Ronald because there's kind of been times, but he hasn't reached the lofty bar that he set throughout the course of his young career. But there is still a good amount of time for him to get back to form, and we'll see if he's able to perhaps get his thing going. Because as he goes, I think this whole lineup can go and can follow, and getting Austin Riley back in that mix would also help. Also worth throwing in there, Pierce Johnson could be back in the Braves bullpen as soon as Saturday. He was eligible to come off the injured list on Friday, but did not. That's an expected move, I think, in advance of Game 2. And Sean Murphy is nearing a rehab assignment, which could be happening in the next few days. That would be a welcome sight for the Braves to get back a 20-homer hitter within, 850 OPS last year to put into their mix, particularly if they're a little bit concerned about, how Travis d'Arnaud is feeling, or if this night was a little bit worse than maybe we let on initially.
Yeah, great to have him back. Obviously, another powerful bat in your lineup. Snickers saying after the game he'll probably start a rehab assignment on Tuesday. I would imagine that's going to be a little bit of a lengthy one, maybe not more than a week, but I'd imagine they want to see him probably catch back-to-back games down there before bringing him up. He's been out for a while, but either way, it will obviously be a welcome sight to have him back, even though Chadwick Tromp's done a great job. He came in today, threw a base runner out, had a double in this game. He's done fantastic. Jack Short, we already talked about filling in. Those guys have done a great job stepping up. Seems like that's always the case with these Braves players coming off the bench in these spots, and so you love to see that. But Sean Murphy, again, with his power, an 800 OPS type of bat, get him in there, just another bat that could potentially help get the offense going.
Yeah, and a guy that I would say that an offense has gone through as much searching as the Braves have in the first 7 weeks of the season, would very much like to have back in the mix. He's been gone since opening day when he strained his oblique. Bryce Elder is going to be on the mound in Game 2. He's going to take on Yu Darvish. Let's talk a little bit about this pitching matchup. Elder better last time out. The one bad start he's had was against the LA Dodgers. That one involved 4 walks and 3 home runs, and he definitely took it on the chin in that one. For the most part, I think, Jake, you look for the same thing that the Braves were able to do tonight. Get as close to a quality start as you can get, let the bullpen do its work, and maybe the offense can figure out a way to solve Yu Darvish, who always seems to be a pretty tough customer and is off to a good start this year. He's 3-1 with a 2.43 ERA. Had some neck stiffness, I think. They had a short stint on the injured list, but by and large, Yu Darvish has looked like Yu Darvish this year.
Yeah, and since he's come back from the injury list, he hasn't allowed a run. So this is the one pitching matchup that on paper you looked at coming in and said it was probably going to be a little bit of a tough one with how good Yu Darvish has been, and Bryce Elder had his ups and downs, and obviously struggled against LA, which is the best offense in baseball right now. The San Diego Padres are a top 10 offense in baseball. So again, that's just one you kind of look at and worry. But Bryce Elder can go out there, give you 5+ innings of 3 earned or less, turn it over to the bullpen, kind of like, Max almost did tonight, wasn't quite able to get out of the 5th inning, but still, the way the bullpen is, Pierce Johnson potentially coming back. I mean, you give this offense a chance. You feel like at some point they're going to have to break out. They're going to have to step up, put some good games together. Like I said, no matter who's on the mound, even if it is Yu Darvish that hasn't given up a run in his past 3 starts, it really just all comes down to what this offense can do at the plate. But for Bryce Elder, can he live on the margins? Can he control those pitches and get players and get hitters to chase, just off the zone with some weak contact? He's going to need the defense too behind him, just like Max Fried does, as he's a pitch to contact guy. So those are all going to be keys for Bryce Elder and the Braves in this one.
It's fascinating looking at this Padres lineup. Maybe fascinating is not the word, but either way, it's a study in what maybe is the unexpected, because you've got certain guys. I mean, they just got Luis Arias. He hasn't been over there for very long, but Jurickson Profar and Jake Cronenworth are the leading bats in this lineup. Yeah. Fernando Tatis has shown some power, but otherwise hitting just over 250. Xander Bogaerts had 2 hits tonight to get himself up to 220. Manny Machado and Ofer drops under 220. They have not really been the producers that you're expecting them to be. It just hasn't been coming from who you would expect it to. But the Padres, they can score some runs. Even if they didn't put up a whole bunch in Game 1 against the Braves, they are capable of it, and Bryce Elder will definitely have to be mindful of it as he goes along through this Padres order in Game 2. Again, a 7:15 p.m. Eastern time first pitch. It's the righty Bryce Elder against the righty Yu Darvish, Game 2 of this 4-game series. That's going to bring us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube, and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Braves unable to come through for Max Fried and maybe give him a little bit of run support on a night in which he wasn't the sharpest he'd been in a 3-1 loss to the San Diego Padres. We'll be back at you a little bit later this weekend. Until then, for Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We'll catch you next time. So long, everyone.